The second session of the Senate in the first regular session of the 17th Congress is hereby called to order. Senator Paolo Benigno Bam Aquino IV will lead the chamber in prayer.
Good afternoon, Mr. President. To begin the 17th Congress, I invite my esteemed colleagues to reflect on this Buddhist prayer. This is the Bodhisattva prayer for humanity. May I be a guard for those who need protection, a guide for those on the path, a boat, a raft, a bridge for those who wish to cross the flood. May I be a lamp in the darkness, a resting place for the weary, a healing medicine for all who are sick, a vase of plenty, a tree of miracles. And for the boundless multitudes of living beings, may I bring sustenance and awakening, enduring like the earth and sky, until all beings are freed from sorrow and all are awakened.
Thank you, Senator Bam. The Secretary may please call the roll.
Roll call of members. The Honorable Senators Angara, Aquino, Binay, Cayetano, De Lima, Drilon, Ejercito, Escudero, Gatchalian, Gordon, Onasan, Ontiveros, Lacson, Ligarda, Pacquiao, Pangilinan, Po, Recto, Soto, Trillanes, Villanueva, Villar, Subiri, and the Senate President Pimentel.
With 16 senators present, the chair declares the presence of a quorum. Majority Leader.
President. Thank you, Mr. President. I move that we dispense with the reading of the journal of the first session, Monday, July 25, 2016, and consider the same as approved.
Is there any objection? There being none, the motion is approved.
Mr. President, before we proceed with the reference of business, may I acknowledge the presence of the students from the BS International Relations from Mindanao State University, Marawi City, headed by Professor Fatima Amer Maruhom Sar, and also grade 11 students of St. Martin Montessori School of Angono, Rizal, headed by Mr. Ernesto Belaro, Mr. President.
Welcome to the Senate, to all our visitors.
Thank you. I now move that we proceed with the reference of business.
Is there any objection? There being none, the motion is approved. Secretary, please read the reference of business.
Senate Bill number 1 entitled An Act Establishing a Detention Program and Facility for High-Level Drug Offenders within the National Penitentiary System under the Bureau of Corrections, appropriating funds therefore and for other purposes, introduced by Senator Soto III.
Referred to the Committees on Justice and Human Rights, Public Order and Dangerous Drugs, and Finance.
Senate Bill number 2 entitled An Act Requiring Employers in the Private Sector to Pay 14th Month Pay, introduced by Senator Soto III.
To the Committee on Labor, Employment, and Human Resources Development. Senator Drilon.
With the permission of the Majority Leader, may we propose that the matter of the 14th month pay also be referred to the Committee on Trade, not only to the Committee on Labor.
Majority Leader.
I have no objection, Mr. President.
That is as a secondary, sir? The secondary committee.
Secondary.
Okay, so upon the motion of Senator Drilon, it is also referred to the Committee on, what's the correct name? Trade and Commerce.
Senate Bill number 3 entitled An Act Amending Article 9 of Republic Act 9165, otherwise known as the Comprehensive Dangerous Drugs Act of 2002, and creating the Presidential Anti-Drug Authority and for other purposes, introduced by Senator Soto III.
To the Committees on Public Order and Dangerous Drugs, Civil Service, Government Reorganization and Professional Regulation, and Finance.
Senate number 4 entitled An Act Imposing Death Penalty in the Philippines, introduced by Senator Soto III.
To the Committees on Justice and Human Rights and Constitutional Amendments and Revision of Codes.
Number 5 entitled An Act Creating a Special Court to be known as the Dangerous Drugs Court and for other purposes, introduced by Senator Soto III.
To the Committees on Justice and Human Rights, Public Order and Dangerous Drugs, and Finance.
Number 6, an act amending Section 1 of Republic Act Number 53, otherwise known as an act to exempt the publisher, editor, or reporter of any publication from revealing the source of published news or information obtained in confidence, introduced by Senator Soto III.
To the Committee on Public Information and Mass Media.
Number 7, an act to eradicate mobile phone-aided terrorism and criminal activities, mandating for this purpose ownership, registration of all prepaid SIM cards for cellular phones, introduced by Senator Soto III.
To the Committees on Public Services and Trade, Commerce, and Entrepreneurship.
Number 8, an act providing for affordable drug rehabilitation treatment for Philippine Health Insurance Corporation beneficiaries, further amending Republic Act 7875 as amended, introduced by Senator Soto III.
To the Committees on Public Order and Dangerous Drugs and Health and Demography.
Number 9, an act promoting mental health, promulgating a national mental health policy towards the enhancement of integrated mental health services, the promotion and protection of persons utilizing mental health services, and establishing of a Philippine Mental Health Council, introduced by Senator Soto III.
To the Committees on Health and Demography and Finance.
Number 10, an act providing tax relief to public school teachers by exempting them from income taxation, amending for the purpose Section 22 and 24A of the National Internal Revenue Code of 1997 as amended, introduced by Senator Soto III.
To the Committee on Ways and Means.
Number 11, an act providing for emergency powers to address the transportation crisis in urbanized areas, introduced by Senator Drilon.
To the Committees on Constitutional Amendments and Revision of Codes, Public Services, and Finance.
Number 12, an act in institutionalizing the Pantawid Pamilyang Pilipino program to address poverty and promote human capital development, introduced by Senator Drilon.
To the Committees on Social Justice, Welfare, and Rural Development, and Finance.
Number 13, an act modifying the compensation and position classification system of civilian government personnel and the base pay schedule of military and uniformed personnel in the government, introduced by Senator Drilon.
To the Committees on Civil Service, Government Reorganization and Professional Regulation, and Finance.
Number 14, an act adjusting the amount involved, value or property of damage on which the penalty is based, and the fines under Act Number 3815 as amended, otherwise known as the Revised Penal Code, introduced by Senator Drilon.
To the Committees on Constitutional Amendments and Revision of Codes, and Justice and Human Rights.
Number 15, an act establishing the Philippine Identification System, introduced by Senator Drilon.
To the Committees on Justice and Human Rights and Finance.
Number 16, an act amending Republic Act 7653, otherwise known as the New Central Bank Act, introduced by Senator Drilon.
To the Committees on Banks, Financial Institutions, and Currencies, and Ways and Means.
Number 17, Immigration Act of the Philippines, introduced by Senator Drilon.
to the Committees on Justice and Human Rights, Civil Service, Government Reorganization and Professional Regulation, and Finance.
Number 18, an act to strengthen the Office of the Government Corporate Counsel by redefining, expanding, strengthening, rationalizing, and further professionalizing its organization, upgrading employee benefits, and appropriating funds, therefore, introduced by Senator Drilon.
To the Committees on Civil Service, Government Reorganization and Professional Regulation, and Finance.
19, an act amending Republic Act number 9225, otherwise known as the Citizenship Retention and Reacquisition Act of 2003, introduced by Senator Drilon.
To the Committee on Justice and Human Rights.
Number 20, an act to exempt passengers from liability for illegal possession of checked-in ammunition, introduced by Senator Honasan the second.
To the Committees on Justice and Human Rights and Public Order and Dangerous Drugs.
Number 21, an act authorizing the wiretapping, interception, surveillance, and recording of communications of pushers, manufacturers, cultivators, importers, and financiers of dangerous drugs, amending for the purpose Republic Act number 9165, and for other purposes, introduced by Senator Honasan II.
To the Committee on Public Order and Dangerous Drugs.
Number 22, an act providing for a national security policy and planning framework and creating an institutional mechanism for implementation and for other purposes, introduced by Senator Honasan II.
To the Committees on National Defense and Security and Finance.
Number 23, an act providing free food for children in public schools and daycare centers from products of farmers purchased by the government, otherwise known as school feeding purchased from poor farmers program, introduced by Senator Honasan II.
To the Committees on Education, Arts and Culture, Agriculture and Food, and Finance.
Number 24, an act fortifying the people's right of ownership over information held by the people's government, introduced by Senator Honasan II.
To the Committees on Public Information and Mass Media, Civil Service, Government Reorganization and Professional Regulation, and Finance.
Number 25, an act instituting a national land use policy, providing the implementing mechanisms therefore, and for other purposes, introduced by Senator Honasan II.
To the Committees on Environment and Natural Resources, Urban Planning, Housing and Resettlement, and Finance.
Number 26, an act declaring a national peace policy, thereby creating a commission on peace, introduced by Senator Honasan II.
To the Committees on Peace, Unification and Reconciliation, Civil Service, Government Reorganization and Professional Regulation, and Finance.
Number 27, an act amending Republic Act number 8049, entitled An Act Regulating Hazing and Other Forms of Initiation Rights in Fraternities, Sororities, and other organizations, and providing penalties therefore and for other purposes, introduced by Senator Honasan II.
To the Committees on Public Order and Dangerous Drugs, and Justice and Human Rights.
28, an act mandating the completion of the land acquisition and distribution component of the Comprehensive Agrarian Reform Program by June 30, 2017, pursuant to Republic Act number 6657, otherwise known as the Comprehensive Agrarian Reform Law as amended, introduced by Senator Honasan II.
To the Committee on Agrarian Reform.
29, an act creating the Agrarian Reform Commission to investigate circumventions and violations of Republic Act number 6657, otherwise known as the Comprehensive Agrarian Reform Law of 1998 as amended, Republic Act number 9700 and other agrarian reform laws, and appropriating funds therefore, introduced by Senator Honasan II.
To the Committees on Agrarian Reform and Finance.
30, an act institutionalizing energy efficiency and conservation, enhancing the efficient use of energy, granting incentives to energy efficiency and conservation projects, and for other purposes, introduced by Senator Ligarda.
To the Committees on Energy, Ways and Means, and Finance.
31, an act establishing the Department of Culture and the Arts, strengthening the National Endowment for Culture and the Arts, and for other purposes, introduced by Senator Ligarda.
To the Committees on Education, Arts and Culture, Civil Service, Government Reorganization and Professional Regulation, and Finance.
32, an act declaring protected areas and providing for their management, amending for this purpose Republic Act number 7586, otherwise known as the National Integrated Protected Area System, Act of 1992, and for other purposes, introduced by Senator Ligarda.
To the Committees on Environment and Natural Resources and Finance.
33, an act to reduce chronic poverty and promote human capital development in the country through the institutionalization of the Pantawid Pamilyang Pilipino program, introduced by Senator Ligarda.
To the Committees on Social Justice, Welfare and Rural Development, and Finance.
34, an act instituting a national land use policy, providing the implementing mechanisms therefore, and for other purposes, introduced by Senator Ligarda.
To the Committees on Environment and Natural Resources, Urban Planning, Housing and Resettlement, and Finance.
35, an act providing for the delineation of the specific forest limits of the public domain and for other purposes, introduced by Senator Ligarda.
To the Committees on Environment and Natural Resources, Local Government, and Finance.
36, an act providing for security of tenure and additional benefits to teachers, amending for the purpose Republic Act number 4670, otherwise known as the Magna Carta for Public School Teachers, and for other purposes, introduced by Senator Ligarda.
To the Committees on Education, Arts and Culture, Civil Service, Government Reorganization and Professional Regulation, and Finance.
37, an act creating the Department of Housing and Urban Development, defining its mandates, powers, and functions, providing funds therefore, and for other purposes, introduced by Senator Ligarda.
To the Committees on Urban Planning, Housing and Resettlement, Civil Service, Government Reorganization and Professional Regulation, and Finance.
38, an act adopting innovation as a vital component of the country's development policies to drive inclusive development, promote the growth and national competitiveness of micro, small, and medium enterprises, and for other purposes, introduced by Senator Ligarda.
To the Committees on Economic Affairs and Trade, Commerce, and Entrepreneurship.
39, an act prohibiting discrimination, profiling, violence, and all forms of intolerance against persons based on ethnicity, race, religion, or belief, sex, gender, sexual orientation, gender identity, language, disability, or other status introduced by Senator Ligarda.
To the Committees on Cultural Communities and Social Justice, Welfare, and Rural Development.
40. An act instituting budget reform that will ensure the equitable distribution of funds for both the national and local government units for the purpose of improving village empowerment, enabling them to be an effective instrument in attaining inclusive growth, appropriating funds therefore and for other purposes, introduced by Senator Lacson.
To the Committee on Finance.
41. An act instituting a national reference system, introduced by Senator Lacson.
To the Committees on Justice and Human Rights and Finance.
42. An act reinstituting the death penalty in the Philippines, introduced by Senator Lacson.
To the Committees on Justice and Human Rights and Constitutional Amendments and Revision of Codes.
43. An act revoking the irrigation service fees imposed on farmers by the National Irrigation Administration, amending for the purpose certain provisions of Republic Act Number 3601, Presidential Decree 552, and Presidential Decree Number 1702, introduced by Senator Lacson.
To the Committees on Agriculture and Food and Finance.
44. An act instituting reforms in real property valuation and assessment in the Philippines, reorganizing the Bureau of Local Government Finance and appropriating funds therefore, introduced by Senator Lacson.
To the Committees on Ways and Means, Local Government, and Finance.
Number 45, an act to provide to further strengthen the Anti-Money Laundering Act, amending for the purpose sections 3, 3A, 3B, 3I, 7, 7.5, 7.6, 7.7, 7.11, 9A, 9C, 10, 11, 14C, 15, and 16, and repealing Section 20 of the Republic Act Number 9160, otherwise known as the Anti-Money Laundering Act of 2001, as amended, introduced by Senator Lacson.
To the Committees on Banks, Financial Institutions and Currencies, and Justice and Human Rights.
46, an act penalizing any person providing or possessing contraband, and those who shall aid or abet the introduction of the same inside any prison facility administered by the Department of Justice, providing penalties therefore and for other purposes, introduced by Senator Lacson.
To the Committee on Justice and Human Rights.
47, an act to amend Section 2 of Republic Act Number 1405, otherwise known as the Secrecy of Bank Deposits Law, exempting government officials and employees from the prohibition against disclosure of or inquiry into deposits within a banking institution and for other purposes, introduced by Senator Lacson.
To the Committee on Banks, Financial Institutions, and Currencies.
Number 48, an act amending Section 3 of Republic Act 4200, otherwise known as an act to prohibit and penalize wiretapping and other related violations of the privacy communication and for other purposes, introduced by Senator Lacson.
To the Committees on Public Order and Dangerous Drugs and National Defense and Security.
Number 49, an act prohibiting the establishment of political dynasties, introduced by Senator Lacson.
To the Committee on Constitutional Amendments and Revision of Codes.
Number 50, an act to promote farmer and fisher folk entrepreneurship and development to be known as Sagip Saka Act of 2016, introduced by Senator Pangilinan.
To the Committees on Agriculture and Food and Ways and Means.
Additional reference of business bills on first reading. Senate Bill number 51, an act creating a Department of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources, providing for its powers and functions and for other purposes, by Senator Pangilinan.
To the Committees on Agriculture and Food, Civil Service, Government Reorganization and Professional Regulation, and Finance.
Senate Bill number 52, an act declaring the coconut levy assets as a trust
President.
fund.
Mr. President, may I move that we should only have one session, the Senate session? There are so many sessions going on in the floor. I can hardly hear the proper session, Mr. President.
Majority Leader, can we talk to our fellow majority senators for a little cooperation by maintaining little silence?
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Will the Sergeant at Arms get my whip?
Minority Leader.
Yes, just for the record, Mr. President, it is not the minority doing caucuses. It is the majority fighting among each other. Just for the record, Mr. President.
Yes, I think I was very specific. I referred to majority senators.
I think we are ready now, Mr. President. We proceed.
Senate Bill number 52, an act declaring the coconut levy assets as a trust fund, providing for its management and utilization, authorizing the Privatization and Management Office to dispose the coconut levy assets, and for other purposes, by Senator Pangilinan.
We are at number 52. Okay. Committees on Agriculture and Food and Finance.
53, an act establishing a strategic food security rice reserve, and for other purposes, by Senator Pangilinan.
To the Committees on Agriculture and Food and Finance.
54, an act implementing the right of the people to information and the constitutional policies of full public disclosure and honesty in public service, and for other purposes, by Senator Pangilinan.
To the Committees on Public Information and Mass Media and Civil Service, Government Reorganization and Professional Regulation.
55, an act institutionalizing grassroots participatory budgeting and the planning and identification of programs and projects to be funded by the Annual General Appropriations Act, by Senator Pangilinan.
To the Committee on Finance.
56, an act increasing the maternity leave period to 150 days of female employees in the government service and in the private sector, and granting an option to further extend said period for an additional 30 days without pay, amending for the purpose Republic Act 1161 as amended, and for other purposes, by Senator Pangilinan.
To the Committees on Women, Children, Family Relations and Gender Equality and Civil Service, Government Reorganization and Professional Regulation.
57, an act upgrading the minimum salary grade of government doctors from salary grade 16 to 24, by Senator Pangilinan.
To the Committees on Civil Service, Government Reorganization and Professional Regulation, Health and Demography, and Finance.
58, an act providing free Wi-Fi internet access in public buildings, transport terminals, and parks, and for other purposes, by Senator Pangilinan.
To the Committees on Science and Technology and Finance.
Senate Bill number 59, an act granting civil service eligibility to government employees under certain conditions, whose status of appointment is either casual or contractual, and who have rendered a total of 5 years of efficient service, by Senator Pangilinan.
To the Committee on Civil Service, Government Reorganization and Professional Regulation.
60, an act expediting universal health care under the National Health Insurance Program and improving the Philippine Health Insurance Corporation's PhilHealth benefit packages, providing funds therefore and for other purposes, by Senator Recto.
To the Committees on Health and Demography and Finance.
61, an act providing for a full tuition subsidy for students enrolled in state universities and colleges, SUCs, and appropriating funds therefore, by Senator Recto.
To the Committees on Education, Arts and Culture, and Finance.
62, an act providing for full irrigation service subsidy for qualified farmers and appropriating funds for the continued operations of the National Irrigation Administration, by Senator Recto.
Number 62.
62.
Okay. To the Committees on Agriculture and Food and Finance.
63, an act increasing pensions under the Social Security system and rationalizing the powers, duties, and accountabilities of the Social Security Commission, further amending for the purpose Republic Act No. 1161, otherwise known as the Social Security Law, by Senator Recto.
To the Committees on Government, Corporations, and Public Enterprises, and Labor, Employment, and Human Resources Development.
64, an act providing for the disposition of coconut levy assets by the Privatization and Management Office, creating the Coconut Industry Fund Committee, and providing for the management, investment, and use of proceeds of such assets for in behalf of the coconut farmers and for other purposes, by Senator Recto.
To the Committees on Agriculture and Food and Finance.
65, an act institutionalizing a conditional cash transfer program, providing for the automatic indexation of cash grants and for other purposes, by Senator Recto.
To the Committees on Social Justice, Welfare, and Rural Development and Finance.
66, an act authorizing public-private partnerships, appropriating funds therefore and for other purposes, by Senator Recto.
To the Committees on Public Works, Economic Affairs, Ways and Means, and Finance.
67, an act adjusting the levels of net taxable income and nominal tax rates for purposes of computing the individual income tax, amending Section 24A2 of the National Internal Revenue Code of 1997 as amended and for other purposes, by Senator Recto.
To the Committee on Ways and Means.
68, an act expanding the coverage and strengthening the powers of the National Telecommunications Commission, amending for the purpose Republic Act 7925, otherwise known as the Public Telecommunications Act of the Philippines, by Senator Recto.
To the Committee on Public Services.
69, an act establishing the Filipino Identification System, providing funds therefore and for other purposes, by Senator Recto.
To the Committees on Justice and Human Rights and Finance.
70, an act providing for national program to support and care for abandoned, neglected, and voluntarily committed children, creating a special trust fund therefore and for other purposes, by Senator Cayetano.
To the Committees on Social Justice, Welfare, and Rural Development, and Women, Children, Family Relations, and Gender Equality.
71, an act increasing the minimum base pay and allowances of the Philippine National Police personnel and providing funds therefore, by Senator Cayetano.
To the Committees on Public Order and Dangerous Drugs and Finance.
72, an act implementing the right of the people to information on matters of public concern, guaranteed under Section 7, Article 3 of the 1987 Constitution, and the state policy of full public disclosure of all its transactions involving public interest under Section 28, Article 2 of the 1987 Constitution, and for other purposes, by Senator Cayetano.
To the Committees on Public Information and Mass Media, and Civil Service, Government Reorganization, and Professional Regulation.
73, an act creating the Emergency Response Department, appropriating funds therefore and for other purposes, by Senator Cayetano.
To the Committees on National Defense and Security, Civil Service, Government Reorganization, and Professional Regulation, and Finance.
74, an act providing for a comprehensive Mindanao Peace and Development Plan, setting the guidelines and appropriating funds therefore and for other purposes, by Senator Cayetano.
To the Committees on Economic Affairs, Peace, Unification, and Reconciliation, and Finance.
75, an act providing for additional support and compensation for educators and basic education, by Senator Cayetano.
To the Committees on Education, Arts, and Culture, Civil Service, Government Reorganization, and Professional Regulation, and Finance.
76, an act repealing Sections 4C, 4, 5, 6, and 7 of RA 10175, otherwise known as the Cybercrime Prevention Act of 2012, by Senator Cayetano.
To the Committees on Science and Technology, and Constitutional Amendments and Revision of Codes.
Senate Bill number 77, an act providing for programs that promote the welfare and development of the Philippine National Police and the Armed Forces of the Philippines personnel through the enhancement of recreational and health facilities in the police and military camps, and providing funds therefore, by Senator Cayetano.
To the Committees on Public Order and Dangerous Drugs, National Defense and Security, Ways and Means, and Finance.
78, an act providing for a support mechanism for the programs of the Department of Education geared towards the advancement of the interests of children with special needs, by Senator Cayetano.
To the Committees on Education, Arts, and Culture, Women, Children, Family Relations, and Gender Equality, and Finance.
79, an act imposing a cigarette floor price on tobacco products to prevent access thereto by the youth and to address the illicit trade of tobacco products to Children by Senator Cayetano.
To the Committees on Trade, Commerce, Entrepreneurship, and Ways and Means.
80, an act requiring public officials and employees to submit written permission or waiver in favor of the Ombudsman to look into all deposits of whatever nature with banks or banking institutions, both within and outside the Philippines, including investment bonds issued by the government in the Philippines, its political subdivisions and instrumentalities in providing penalties, therefore, by Senator Escudero.
To the Committees on Justice and Human Rights, and Banks, Financial Institutions, and Currencies.
81, an act allowing one-person corporations amending for the purpose pertinent provisions of Batas Pambansa Bilang 68 or the Corporation Code of the Philippines as amended by Senator Escudero.
To the Committee on Trade, Commerce, and Entrepreneurship.
82, an act implementing the right of the people to information on matters of public concern guaranteed under Section 7, Article 3 of the 1987 Constitution and the state policy of full public disclosure of all its transactions involving public interest under Section 28, Article 2 of the Constitution and for other purposes by Senator Escudero.
To the Committees on Public Information and Mass Media, and Civil Service, Government Reorganization, and Professional Regulation.
83, an act amending Paragraph A, Section 393, Chapter 4, Title 1, Book 3 of Republic Act 7160, the Local Government Code as amended, increasing the benefits of barangay officials by Senator Escudero.
To the Committee on Local Government.
84, an act amending Sections 2 and 5 of Republic Act Number 9227, otherwise known as an act granting additional compensation in the form of special allowances for justices, judges, and all other positions in the judiciary with the equivalent rank of justices of the Court of Appeals and judges of the Regional Trial Court by Senator Escudero.
To the Committees on Civil Service, Government Reorganization, and Professional Regulation, and Justice and Human Rights.
85, Philippine Immigration Act by Senator Escudero.
To the Committees on Justice and Human Rights, Civil Service, Government Reorganization, and Professional Regulation, and Finance.
86, an act reverting to the national government the discharge of basic agricultural functions and responsibilities devolved to local government units and amending for the purpose Republic Act Number 7160, otherwise known as the Local Government Code of 1991 by Senator Escudero.
To the Committees on Local Government, Agriculture and Food, and Finance.
87, an act decriminalizing libel by means of writing or similar repealing Article 355 of the revised Penal Code by Senator Escudero.
To the Committee on Justice and Human Rights.
88, an act providing for protection, security, and benefits of whistleblowers by Senator Escudero.
To the Committees on Justice and Human Rights and Finance.
89, an act lowering the retirement age of the employees of the Department of Education from 65 years old to 60 years old by Senator Escudero.
To the Committee on Civil Service, Government Reorganization, and Professional Regulation.
90, an act adopting an omnibus compensation and position classification of civilian personnel and the base pay schedule of military and uniformed personnel in government and for other purposes by Senator Trillanes IV.
To the Committees on Civil Service, Government Reorganization, and Professional Regulation, National Defense and Security, and Finance.
91, an act mandating a 2,000 peso across-the-board increase in the monthly pension with corresponding adjustment of minimum monthly pension under the Social Security system, amending for the purpose Section 12 of Republic Act Numbers 1161 as amended, otherwise known as the Social Security Act of 1997 by Senator Trillanes IV.
To the Committees on Government Corporations and Public Enterprises, and Labor, Employment, and Human Resources Development.
92, an act to establish the archipelagic sea lanes in the Philippine archipelagic waters, prescribing the rights and obligations of foreign ships and aircraft, exercising the right of archipelagic sea lanes passage through the established archipelagic sea lanes and providing for the associated protected measures therein by Senator Trillanes IV.
To the Committee on Foreign Relations.
93, an act to define the maritime zones of the Republic of the Philippines by Senator Trillanes IV.
To the Committee on Foreign Relations.
94, an act implementing the people's right to information and constitutional policy to full public disclosure and honesty in the public service and for other purposes by Senator Trillanes IV.
To the Committees on Public Information and Mass Media, Civil Service, Government Reorganization, and Professional Regulation, and Finance.
95, an act establishing the Filipino Identification System and appropriating funds therefore by Senator Trillanes IV.
To the Committees on Justice and Human Rights, and Finance.
96, an act institutionalizing and further developing 117 as the nationwide emergency assistance telephone number for public safety and security and for other purposes by Senator Trillanes IV.
To the Committees on Public Order and Dangerous Drugs, Local Government, and Finance.
97, an act to increase the old age pension of military veterans, amending for the purpose Section 10 of Republic Act Number 6948 by Senator Trillanes IV.
To the Committees on National Defense and Security and Finance.
98, an act increasing the quarters allowance of officers and enlisted personnel of the Armed Forces of the Philippines and for other purposes by Senator Trillanes IV.
To the Committees on National Defense and Security and Finance.
99, an act providing for a comprehensive nursing law towards quality health care system and appropriating funds therefore by Senator Trillanes IV.
To the Committees on Civil Service, Government Reorganization and Professional Regulation, Health and Demography, and Finance.
Senate Bill Number 100, an act amending Section 13 of Republic Act Number 9369, introduced by Senator Gordon.
To the Committee on Electoral Reforms and People's Participation.
Second additional reference to business resolutions. Resolutions of both houses number 1, entitled Resolution Calling for a Convention to Propose Amendments to a Revision of the Constitution of the Republic of the Philippines by Senator Drilon.
To the Committees on Constitutional Amendments and Revision of Codes, Electoral Reforms and People's Participation, and Finance.
Resolution of both houses number 2, a resolution of both houses of Congress proposing amendments to certain restrictive economic provisions in the 1987 Constitution of the Republic of the Philippines, specifically in Articles 12, 14, and 16 thereof, introduced by Senator Recto.
To the Committee on Constitutional Amendments and Revision of Codes.
Senate Joint Resolution Number 1, Joint Resolution to propose amendments to or revisions of the economic provisions of the Constitution by Senator Gordon.
To the Committee on Constitutional Amendments and Revision of Codes.
Proposed Senate Resolution Number 1, directing the appropriate Senate committees in the Senate to conduct an inquiry and aid of legislation into the practice of contractualization and subcontractualization as work arrangements in the Philippines with the end in view of strengthening and correcting loopholes in the implementation of labor laws by Senator Subiri.
To the Committees on Labor, Employment, and Human Resources Development, and Civil Service, Government Reorganization, and Professional Regulation.
Proposed Senate Resolution Number 2, expressing the sense of the Senate to nominate Wang Od Ogay for the Gawad sa Manlilikha ng Bayan, Gamaba, or the National Living Treasures Award for her immense contribution in promoting and preserving Filipino traditional folk art by Senator Maria Lourdes Nancy S. Binay.
To the Committee on Rules.
Number 3, a resolution directing the proper Senate committees to inquire and aid of legislation on the Manila International Airport Authority, Memorandum Circular Number 8, Series of 2014, providing for the integration of 550 international passenger service charge or airport terminal fee into airline tickets by Senator Maria Lourdes Nancy S. Binay.
To the Committees on Public Services and Labor, Employment, and Human Resources Development.
Number 4, resolution to conduct an inquiry and aid of legislation to promote competition and telecommunications by Senator Gordon.
To the Committee on Public Services.
Number 5, resolution directing the Committee on Labor, Employment, and Human Resources Development to conduct an inquiry and aid of legislation on the feasibility of a telecommuting pilot program in the Philippines by Senator Joel Tesdaman Villanueva.
To the Committee on Labor, Employment, and Human Resources Development.
Number 6, directing the appropriate committee to conduct an inquiry and aid of legislation on the role of Filipino labor attaches in networking with industries abroad and monitoring and reporting the skills needs of these industries to enhance the country's deployment program for overseas Filipino workers by Senator Joel Tesdaman Villanueva.
To the Committees on Labor, Employment, and Human Resources Development and Foreign Relations.
Number 7, directing the Committees on Labor, Employment, and Human Resources Development and Trade, Commerce, and Entrepreneurship to conduct an inquiry and aid of legislation on the skills requirements of micro, small, and medium enterprises in the Philippines and the adoption of a training contract scheme for MSMEs by Senator Joel Tesdaman Villanueva.
To the Committees on Labor, Employment, and Human Resources Development and Trade, Commerce, and Entrepreneurship.
Proposed Senate Resolution Number 8, expressing the sense of the Senate of the Philippines to mandate government offices to strictly observe and implement the law on mandatory random drug testing in support of the drug-free workplace program of the government by Senator Subiri.
To the Committee on Rules.
Number 9, directing the Senate Committee on Justice and Human Rights to investigate in aid of legislation the recent rampant extrajudicial killings and summary executions of suspected criminals, to strengthen the mechanisms of accountability of law enforcers, and to institute corrective legislative measures to ensure full respect for basic human rights, especially the right to life, by Senator Laila M. De Lima.
To the Committees on Public Order and Dangerous Drugs and Justice and Human Rights.
Number 10,
Mr. President,
Majority Leader.
Senator De Lima has expressed reservation on the reference, but there are also two other bills and resolutions. So I will just allow you to finish. I will allow the Second Secretary to finish, and then after the reference of business, I will move for these references to be reconsidered, Mr. President.
Covering 3 measures?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Secretary, please continue with the reference of business.
Number 10, directing the Congressional Oversight Committee on Philippine Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Act of 2010 to conduct a sunset review of the Act and evaluate its accomplishments and impact, as well as the performance and organizational structure of its implementing agencies for purposes of determining remedial legislation, by Senator Lacson.
To the Committee on National Defense and Security.
11, to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation on the rampant contractualization of workers by retail and service establishments, manufacturing, and other industries to circumvent workers' right to security of tenure, by Senator Gordon.
To the Committee on Labor, Employment, and Human Resources Development.
Number 12, directing the Senate Committees on Climate Change, Energy, and Justice and Human Rights to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation on the alleged detrimental environmental and health impacts and human rights infringements arising from the operation of coal-fired power plants, with the end view of determining the viability of imposing a moratorium on the issuance of environmental compliance certificates for the construction of additional coal-fired power plants, and the development of a clear policy towards a low-carbon economy in light of our country's commitments under the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, by Senator Ligarda.
To the Committees on Climate Change, Environment, and Natural Resources.
Number 13, directing the Committees on Climate Change and Ways and Means to look into the viability of establishing carbon pricing mechanisms in the country to ensure its compliance with the targets for greenhouse gas emission reduction set in the country's intended nationally determined contributions under the Paris Climate Change Agreement, by Senator Ligarda.
To the Committees on Climate Change and Ways and Means.
Number 14, directing the Senate Committee on Environment and Natural Resources to lead the conduct of the environmental audit of relevant national agencies and local government units in relation to their compliance to existing environmental laws in light of the continued ecosystems decline and environmental pollution, with the end view of introducing measurable indicators and targets and encouraging public accountability of all government officials, by Senator Ligarda.
To the Committee on Environment and Natural Resources.
Number 15, urging the National Economic Development Authority to update our development indicators to reflect the happiness and well-being of Filipinos, adopting the gross national happiness concept of the Royal Government of Bhutan for this purpose, with the end view of pursuing the holistic development of the country amid the threats of climate change and increased disaster risk, by Senator Ligarda.
To the Committee on Economic Affairs.
Number 16, resolution commending former President Benigno Simeon Noynoy Aquino III and other patriotic Filipinos for winning the arbitration case questioning the People's Republic of China's 9-dash line claim in the South China Sea, by Senator Pimentel III.
To the Committee on Rules. Majority Leader. Session. Okay, with the permission of the body, a minute suspension.
Sino?
So, parang i-replace nyo lang. Session resumed.
Mr. President, may I be allowed to housekeeping chores? First, may I move to change the primary referral of Senate Bill number 11 from the Committee on Constitutional Amendments to the Committee on Public Services as primary committee and the Committee on Constitutional Amendments as the secondary committee. So move, Mr. President.
There is a motion to change the referral of Senate Bill number 11. Is there any objection? There being none, the motion is carried.
Second, Mr. President, on PS Resolution number 9, as I manifested earlier, requested by Senator Laila de Lima, that it be referred primarily to the Committee on Justice and Human Rights and secondarily to the Committee on Public Order and Dangerous Drugs. So move, Mr. President.
There is a motion to change the referral of PS Resolution number 9 as manifested by the Majority Leader. Any objection? There being none, the motion is approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, pursuant to Rule 10, Section 13, in relation to Section 18 of the Senate Rules, I now move that we proceed with the organization of the various standing committees of the Senate by electing the members. I so move, Mr. President, that we start.
There is a motion to start the organization of the standing committees of the Senate by the election of their chairman and members. Is there any objection? There being none, the motion is approved.
Thank you. Mr. President, this representation was elected chair of the Committee on Rules. So I now move that we elect as members to the committee Senators Honasan, Aquino, Lacson, Legarda, Poe, and Gatchalian. The members of the minority will be elected at the time when they are ready to do so, Mr. President. Rules.
I can manifest already.
There is
We recognize the minority
leader.
to manifest the membership of the Rules Committee.
Ilan yung member lang? For the minority, I would like to manifest the membership of the two members of the minority, Senator Escudero and Senator Trillanes.
Okay, we will do this in the following manner. Let us approve first the manifestation of the majority leader and then the manifestation or the motion of the minority leader to include the minority contingent to the said committee. Okay, so
Yes,
There is
may I call for the previous question,
Yes,
therefore?
sir.
The motion
Sir,
of the
there is a
majority
motion
leader of
now.
the 7 members of the Committee on Rules.
there is now a motion to constitute the Committee on Rules as read by the majority leader. Any objection? There being none, the motion is approved. On the second motion of the minority leader,
On the part of the minority, we have two members, and I'd like to nominate, on the part of the minority, Senator Escudero and Senator Trillanes.
there is a motion made by the minority leader to include in the Committee on Rules the named senators. Any objection? There being none, the motion is approved. Majority Leader, can we explain the practice in the Senate that the first member named is automatically treated as the Vice Chairman?
Yes, Mr. President, based on our rules, the first member named by the chairman or listed by the chairman automatically is the vice chairman of the committee unless it is clearly manifested by the chairman that there is another vice chairman or there are two vice chairmen. We are allowed to have more than one vice chairman, Mr. President.
Okay, so that is how we will proceed, and that is our understanding. Yes, Senator Pangilinan?
Yes, Mr. President, thank you. Just a clarification, because yesterday we elected the chairperson of the Rules Committee. So how do we proceed with the election of the chairpersons of the other committees? Do we go through it in the same way that we proceed with the members?
Yes, the majority leader will nominate the chairman as well as the members of the said committee. And as stated, the first name to be mentioned as member is to be treated as the vice chairman of the said committee. Okay? Majority leader?
Thank you, Mr. President. For the Committee on Constitutional Amendments and Revision of Codes, 11 members, Mr. President. I move that we elect Senator Franklin Drilon as chairperson, chairman, and Senator De Lima and Pangilinan and manifested as vice chair. Members Ejercito, Legarda, Angara, Gordon, Aquino, and Hontiveros. Gusto mo, manifest ko na? For the minority, Mr. President, Escudero and Trillanes.
Okay, to shorten the process, we will follow single motion to constitute the committee. So, there is a motion to constitute the Committee on Constitutional Amendments and Revision of Codes as named by the majority leader. Any objection? There being none, the motion is approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. For the Committee on Public Order and Dangerous Drugs, may we elect the chairman, Senator Pampilo Lacson, and members Honasan, Trillanes, Legarda, Binay, De Lima, Pacquiao, Po, Ejercito, Hontiveros. And for the minority, Trillanes and Escudero, Mr. President. So move.
There is a motion to constitute the Committee on Public Order and Dangerous Drugs, chaired by Senator Lacson, with members as named by the majority leader. Any objection? There being none, the motion is approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. For the Committee on Education, I move that we elect Senator Bam Aquino as chairman, and for vice chairman, Senator Sani Angara, Senator Sherwin Gatchalian, and Senator Joel Villanueva, and members Senators Nancy Binay, J.B. Ejercito, Dick Gordon, Grace Poe, Lauren Legarda, Manny Pacquiao, Risa Ontiveros, and Cynthia Villar. For the minority, Senators Chis Escudero and Senator Sani Trillanes. Also, Senator Aquino wants to elect Senator Alan Cayetano as a member of the Education Committee. I so move, Mr. President.
There is a motion to constitute the Committee on Education, Arts, and Culture, with Chairman Senator Aquino and these members as named by the majority leader. Any objection? There being none, the motion is approved.
For the Committee on Tourism, Mr. President, I move that we elect Senator Nancy Binay as chairman and Senators Ejercito as vice chairman. Members Gordon, Legarda, Villar, Pacquiao for the majority, Mr. President.
Ilan ba ito sa'yo? What committee? Isa lang? Tourism?
Isa lang, tourism lang. Sino?
Mga members.
Wala.
Nag-iisa ka.
At the appropriate time, we will elect.
That's how I did, Mr. President. At the appropriate time, the minority will be ready with their members. In the meantime, I so move that we elect those members that I mentioned.
Tourism. There is a motion to constitute the Committee on Tourism with Senator Binay as chair and senators named as members thereof. Any objection? There being none, the motion is approved and the Committee on Tourism is so constituted.
Yes.
Bigay sa'yo, boss. Dating akin. Facing means locally.
Mamaya ito. For the Committee on Public Services, Mr. President, I move that we elect Senator Grace Poe as chairman, Vice Chairman Senator J.B. Ejercito, members Gordon, Loren, Legarda, Zubiri, Trillanes, Escudero as for members of the minority, Aquino, Angara, Pacquiao, Lacson, and Villanueva.
There is a motion to constitute the Committee on Public Services with Senator Poe as chairperson and the senators named as members thereof. Any objection? There being none, the motion is approved and the Committee on Public Services is so constituted.
For the Committee on Agriculture, Mr. President, 11 members. I move that we elect Senator Francis Pangilinan as chairman, Senator Cynthia Villar as vice chair, and members Pacquiao, Zubiri, Gordon, Aquino, Legarda, De Lima, Poe for the majority.
The minority, in due time?
Same now,
Same.
maximum two. Escudero and Trillanes, Mr. President.
Let's. I think we better name them for the record. No?
Yes, Senator Escudero and Trillanes for the minority.
There is a motion to constitute the Committee on Agriculture and Food with Senator Pangilinan as chair, with the senators named as members thereof. Any objection? There being none, the motion is approved. The Committee on Agriculture and Food is so constituted.
For the Committee on Ways and Means, Mr. President, I move that we elect Senator Angara and Vice Chair Senator Legarda, Senator Villanueva, and Senator Aquino. Members Zubiri, Gordon, Poe, Ejercito, Pangilinan, Hontiveros, Binay. For the minority, Escudero, Trillanes. So move, Mr. President.
There is a motion to constitute the Committee on Ways and Means with Senator Angara as chairman,
Wala, I didn't fully constitute it yet. There are two vacant.
with the senators named as members thereof. Any objection? There being none, the motion is approved. The Committee on Ways and Means is so constituted.
You can read it. Additional Alan.
Mr. President, may we also elect Senator Alan Cayetano as additional member for the Committee on Ways and Means?
There is a motion So one vacant.
to elect Senator Cayetano as additional member to the Committee on Ways and Means. Any objection? There being none, Senator Cayetano is added to the members of the Committee on Ways and Means.
Thank you. Mr. President, I move that we elect the Senator Laila De Lima as chair of the Committee on Justice and Human Rights, Senator Francis Pangilinan as vice chair, and members Legarda, Poe, Hontiveros,
Justice.
Lacson, Honasan, and for the minority, Escudero, Trillanes, Mr. President.
There is a motion to constitute the Committee on Justice and Human Rights with Senator De Lima as chairperson and the senators named as members thereof. Any objection? There being none, the motion is approved and the Committee on Justice and Human Rights is so constituted.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that we elect the members, the chairman and the members of the Committee on National Defense and Security. Senator Gregorio Honasan as as chairman, and as chairman, vice chairman, Senators Lacson, Legarda, Trillanes, and also representing the minority. And members De Lima, Hontiveros, Gordon, Binay, Gatchalian, Ejercito, Pacquiao, Pangilinan, Villanueva, Cayetano, Villar, Aquino, Angara, Escudero, and Zubiri. So move, Mr. President.
Is the minority already represented?
Yes, well represented.
There is a motion to constitute the Committee on National Defense and Security with Senator Honasan as chairman and the senators named as members thereof. Any objection? There being none, the motion is approved and the Committee on National Defense and Security is so constituted.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that we elect Senator J.B. Ejercito as chairman of the Committee on Urban Planning, Housing, and Resettlement, and Vice Chairman Senator Manny Pacquiao, members Legarda, Villar, Angara, Binay, Hontiveros, Gatchalian, Villanueva, and for the minority, Escudero and Trillanes. So move, Mr. President.
There is a motion to constitute the Committee on Urban Planning, Housing, and Resettlement with Senator Ejercito as chairman and the other senators named as members thereof and vice chairman. Any objection? There being none, the motion is approved and the Committee on Urban Planning, Housing and Resettlement is so constituted.
Mr. President, I move that we elect Senator Loren Legarda as chairman of the Committee on Finance, and with 17 members, Vice Chair, Senator Angara, Aquino, Lacson, and Villar. Members, Po, Binay, Ejercito, Honasan, Gatchalian, Zubiri, Gordon, Villanueva, Pangilinan, Pacquiao, Hontiveros. For the members of the minority, Senator Escudero and Trillanes.
There is a motion to constitute the Committee on Finance with Senator Legarda as chairperson thereof and the vice chair and the senators as vice chair and members. Any objection?
Mr. President,
Yes, sir.
may I have a 1 minute suspension, Mr. President?
Pwede ba kami mag-suspend? 1 minute suspension. Pwede.
We computed the ratio as 21:3.
Dalawa daw hinihingi mo sa tray.
Majority. So, 21. Ano ratio natin? 21 over 24. Members. Paano ba? Ano yung may butal? Kunya, may mga butal. May mga butal parati yan. Yung kanina. Kasi paano? Meron na kayo dyan? Hindi ko umabot sa 21. Kasi pa kayo 21. Ah, ito na? 7.5. Oh, kinumpit, ginano na ninyo. Kinumpit na ninyo. Hindi, bigay ko na dito sa inyo, miso? Para...
Membership ko daw 7 plus 1 plus
Awag, 21 na. Sino sabi? So, bigyan natin kayo dito, Sen. Bago ba? Bago ba? Oo, 6-1. Bigyan mo, para may guidance siya. Ano to? Edwin, meron tayong pending kanina. Paano ko ba ipapabalik yung pending? This tape ba?
Merienda muna.
Okay, session resumed.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Majority
Before we
Leader.
continue, may I ask Senator Francis Pangilinan to manifest this or his parliamentary inquiry?
Senator Pangilinan.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, the inquiry is actually in connection with the proportionate representation of the majority and the minority in the different committees. We were made to understand that the majority and the minority representation should be proportionate in each committee, Mr. President. That is the rules as provided. Such being the case, Mr. President, we would like to know how many members constitute the majority in the Senate and how many members constitute the minority so that we can correctly determine the proportionate representation of each committee, Mr. President.
The chair would give his reply, which is just an opinion, but this is assisted by the indispensable assistance or help of Senator Subiri by calling Senator Alan Cayetano, who told him that for purposes of the distribution of membership in the committees, Senator Alan Cayetano should be counted with the majority. So 21 out of 24, so we use the formula, we multiply the number of members times 0.875 to arrive at the number of seats for the majority, and multiplies the number of the membership with 0.125 to arrive at the number of seats for the minority per committee.
Thank you for that clarification, Mr. President, because earlier we were in a quandary as to whether we would include Senator Cayetano with the minority or the majority. But with that manifestation and
Thank you.
clarification, the computations are now clear. Thank you very much.
And the majority leader will just manifest if we need to do some corrections in our previously constituted committees.
Yes, Mr. President, we will be polishing the
Yes, in due time.
the manifested or the journal of what transpired during the last elections of the different members of the different committees. May we recognize the minority
Leader.
Thank you, Majority Leader. Thank you, Mr. President. Just for the record and maybe an appeal to the Chair, since we've made all these calculations earlier, and there are point in the calculations based on the proportional representation, may we appeal from the minority to the majority that we be liberal in favor of the minority. Because, for example, it could be that the minority representation is 1.4. I-round off na natin to 2 yan in favor of the minority. Total naman, 3 lang kami dito in the Senate.
So the appeal of the minority leader is noted and referred to the majority leader for proper action.
I will refer it to Mr. President. I would rather that you directly refer it to the Committee on Rules. I will take it up with the other members on or before Monday so that we can fully discuss it. As I said, we will polish the previous elections already of the different.
Again, just to
Is that
put on
okay
record,
with the minority leader?
just to put on record, based on all the committees that we have already read on the floor, that has already been the practice. So for the other committees yet to be read, as far as the membership is concerned, we followed that practice already, being liberal in favor of the minority, as what the chairman of the Constitutional Amendment Committee has done already, Senator Drilon.
All right.
Thank
So
you.
can the appeal of the minority leader be referred to the Committee on Rules led by our majority leader? Without any, there is no objection, the said appeal is referred to the Committee on Rules.
Thank you, Mr. President.
When we suspended majority leader, there was a pending
Yes, there was a pending motion to approve the membership of the Committee on Finance, headed by the chair, Senator Loren Legarda. And it ended by the membership of the minority as Escudero and Trillanes. So I so move, Mr. President. That,
and the membership is not affected by this latest...
Not at all, Mr.
so
President. Even the
there
Vice
is a
Chairman.
motion to constitute the Committee on Finance.
Yes.
Led by Senator, to be chaired by Senator Legarda, with the senators named as members thereof. Any objection? There being none, the Committee on Finance is so constituted.
Thank you, Mr. President. There are two committees that we have to go back to, but I will do that later, Mr. President. May I just continue now? For the Committee on Environment and Natural Resources, may we elect as chairman Senator Cynthia Villar and members Senator Legarda, Ejercito, Honasan, Zubiri, Villanueva, Gordon, Aquino, Binay, Pacquiao, Angara, Pangilinan, Cayetano, And for the minority, Trillanes Escudero, Mr. President.
There is a motion to constitute the Committee on Environment and Natural Resources with Senator Villar as chairperson and these other senators named as members thereof. Any objection? There being none, the motion is approved and the Committee on Environment and Natural Resources is so constituted.
For the Committee on Public Works, Mr. President, I move that we elect as chairman Senator Manny Pacquiao, Vice Chairman Senator J.B. Ejercito, members Loren Legarda, Lacson, Zubiri, Gordon, Pangilinan, Binay, Villanueva, Angara, Gatchalian, and for the minority, Trillanes Escudero.
There is a motion to constitute the Committee on Public Works with Senator Pacquiao as chairman and the other senators named as members thereof. Any objection? There being none, the motion is approved and the Committee on Public Works is so constituted.
For the Committee on Energy, Mr. President, I move that we elect Senator Sherwin Gatchalian and Vice Chair Senator Binay and Senator Legarda. Members Aquino, De Lima, Po, Ejercito, Villanueva, Gordon, Angara, Pacquiao, Honasan. For the minority, dalawa to. Two. Trillanes Escudero, Mr. President.
There is a motion to constitute the Committee on Energy with Senator Gatchalian as chairman and the other senators named as members thereof. Any objection? There being none, the motion is approved and the Committee on Energy is so constituted.
For the Committee on Labor, Mr. President, I move that we elect Senator Joel Villanueva as chairman and members Senator Angara as vice chair, Aquino, Binay, Villar, Po, J.B. Ejercito, Pacquiao, Legarda, Lacson, Hontiveros, and for the minority, Escudero. May I have a 1 minute suspension, Mr. President?
A minute suspension.
Oo nga, hindi, pero... Ang slot, dalawa eh. Dalawa.
Pinapalaki ni Pig niya, 21.
Are we ready to resume, Mr. President?
Session resumed.
Mr. President, as I mentioned earlier for the minority, Senator Cayetano and Escudero, but I would like to correct that. Senator Escudero for the minority. Now, the slot of Senator Trillanes for the minority, they have elected to elect Senator Cayetano instead, to give it to the majority. The minority leader concurs with the manifestation.
Minority Leader.
Yes, just for the record, we are showing that in the minority we can be liberal in favor of the majority.
Thank you. Senator Drilon.
May I inquire from the Committee on Rules if a member of the minority group can nominate somebody from the majority as a member of the minority? That is most unusual, Mr. President.
Yeah, well, it is indeed unusual, Mr. President, but it was done through the chair, the chairman of the committee. The chairman of the committee was the one who manifested the change,
but Mr. Chairman, the membership in the committee is voted upon by the chamber, and therefore it is not the choice of not even the president. The chair of the committee nominates his or her members, and the membership is voted by the chamber as a whole, the whole committee. And therefore, I think I would have my very serious reservations about the minority leader being able to say, all right, we substitute Senator Escudero with Senator Cayetano. I don't think that's proper, Mr. President.
Senator Pangilinan would like to join the discussion with the permission of the gentleman. Yes, Senator Pangilinan is recognized.
Yes, Mr. President. I think the matter should be referred to the Committee on Rules.
Yes. Before that,
Because the memberships to our committees are determined by our, the proportionate representation is determined by our rules and not by the body. If we wish to amend the rules by allowing such adjustments to the representation, Mr. President, then that should be the direction we are to take. But otherwise, Mr. President, I'd like to refer the matter to the committee.
Mr. President, if I
Minority
may.
Leader.
Let me go back, Mr. President. It is the chairman, which comes from the majority, who came to the minority leader requesting us, kung pwede, we give up one of our representatives in favor of the majority. So it is a request coming from the majority. We are being cooperative. The minority leader here and the minority, tatlo lang po kami, and we are being cooperative. Requested by the majority.
we appreciate the magnanimity, Mr. President, of the minority leader, but I think it will lead us to some problems. And that is why, thank you for the magnanimity, Mr. Minority Leader, but you can take it back.
President,
Yes.
Yes, Majority Leader.
I withdraw my motion, Mr. President. I will move for a different motion afterwards. I withdraw the motion.
Okay, the motion is withdrawn. But can the
Thank you,
chair,
Mr. President.
can the chair share his own thinking on the issue? Actually, it's the majority making the motion to for the minority to give up one seat, and they precisely accommodated us. So there should not be any problem with that.
Because, Mr.
Yes, sir.
President, with all due respect, when you nominate a majority to the minority, that majority member now represents the minority in the committee. So it is not a question of magnanimity.
Anyway, the Committee on Rules should study.
Yes, Mr. President.
We are filling up the membership of committees. We are following a mathematical ratio as a guide. But if the minority does not mind that it be strictly followed in a certain committee, then I believe that there should be no issue. Yes, Senator Pangilinan?
Mr. President, my concern is if this applies to this particular committee, what will stop all other committees and all other chairpersons to do the same? This will create problems, Mr. President.
An objection from the minority. That would stop us.
Well,
Because an objection from the minority, especially if we now distort too much the ratio given by the membership
Mr.
in the Senate. Well, that's my opinion, but
Yeah.
to be studied in depth by the Committee on Rules.
yes.
Yes, yes, Mr. President, we will take into consideration all the manifestations made. But right now, I will rephrase my motion. All right. I move that we elect Senator Joel Villanueva as Chairman of the Committee on Labor, Senator Angara as Vice Chair, and Senators Aquino, Binay, Villar, Poe, JB, Ercito, Pacquiao, Legarda, Lacson, Hontiveros as members. There are 2 slots left for the minority. Let them decide later on. I so move, Mr. President.
There is a motion to constitute the Committee on Labor, Employment, and Human Resources Development with Senator Villanueva as chairman and the senators named as members, with the minority to manifest their membership in some future time. Any objection? There being none, the motion is approved. The Committee on Labor, Employment, and Human Resources Development is so constituted as manifested.
Thank you. Mr. President, may we recognize the Minority Leader, Mr. President?
No, Minority Leader.
The majority have chosen its members, and if the minority has 2 members in this committee, we only have 2 members anyway in the minority, then I would like to nominate, in behalf of the minority, Senator Escudero and Senator Trillanes.
There is a motion from the Minority Leader to add as members to the Committee on Labor, Employment, and Human Resources Development as representatives of the minority the named senators. Is there any objection? There being none, the motion is approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I will assure you that we will take up the issue that was taken up. Although we were able to resolve it right now, we will look into the matter more closely. Thank you. So, Mr. President, for the Committee on Civil Service, Government Reorganization, and Professional Regulations, I move that we elect as Chairman Senator Trillanes and Vice Chairman Senator Escudero, the members Po, Villar, Honasan, Pacquiao, and Ejercito.
May minority ba yan? Is there a minority name?
The chairman and the vice chairman are minority.
Okay, sorry, I did not I did not realize. Yes, there is a motion to constitute the Committee on Civil Service, Government Reorganization, and Professional Regulation with Senator Trillanes as chairman and the other senators as members thereof. Any objection? There being none, the motion is approved and the Civil Service Committee is hereby constituted.
For the Committee on Trade, Commerce, and Entrepreneurship, may move that we elect Senator Mig Zubiri as chairman and members Gatchalian, Aquino, Gordon, Villar, Legarda, Po. 1 minute suspension, Mr.
1
President.
minute suspension.
Sa tito, Senator, I'm still finding out who
Si Angara Sani pala.
Angara pala to? Okay, okay. Sino?
Hindi gusto sumama si Pakito sila lahat.
Sobra. Hindi. So, sobra siya. Minority kulang. Di ba, pwede ko naman kumatin dyan. We're ready to resume, Mr. President.
Session is resumed.
May I repeat my motion, Mr. President? I move that we elect Senator Mig Zubiri as chairman of the Committee on Trade, Commerce, and Entrepreneurship, and members Gatchalian, Aquino, Gordon, Villar, Legarda, Po, Angara for the majority. And for the minority, Salam to. 9 lang. 9 members. Sino?
Dalawa dapat kami dyan, binigay namin kay
Sino?
Cynthia. Binigay namin kay Cynthia.
So, sino ang trade? Sino ang trade minority?
Escudero.
And Senator Escudero for the minority, Mr. President.
Okay, there is a motion to constitute the Committee on Trade, Commerce, and Entrepreneurship with Senator Zubiri as chairman and the other senators named as members thereof. Any objection? There being none, the motion is approved, and the Committee on Trade, Commerce, and Entrepreneurship is hereby constituted.
Thank you, Mr. President. For the Committee on Health, I move that we elect Senator Riza Ontiveros as chairman, Vice Chairman Senator Honasan, members De Lima, Gordon, Legarda for the moment. She is not completing the membership yet, Mr. President. We will continue it at the proper time.
Okay, so there is a motion to constitute the Committee on Health and Demography to be chaired by Senator Ontiveros, and the senators named as members thereof to be completed in due time. Is there any objection? There being none, the motion is approved, and the Committee on Health and Demography is hereby constituted as stated.
Mr. President, I move that we elect Senator Escudero and Trillanes as members of the Committee on Health for the minority. For the majority, Senator Ontiveros will complete this by Monday, Mr. President.
There is a motion to add to the membership of the Committee on Health and Demography Senators Trillanes and Escudero to represent the minority. Any objection? There being none, the motion is approved.
All right. Mr. President, earlier in the Committee on Education, we elected as one of the members, Senator Alan Cayetano. But I am now being told by Senator Aquino that because he was included in the minority, so the manifestation is that we will replace Senator Cayetano with Senator Pangilinan as members of the majority instead of the minority, because Escudero and Trillanes are already members of the Committee on Education. Therefore, the motion is that in the Committee on Education, we replace Senator Cayetano with Senator Pangilinan.
There is a motion to replace as member of the Committee on Education, Arts and Culture Senator Cayetano with Senator Pangilinan. Is there any objection? There being none, the motion is approved.
For the Committee on Tourism, Mr. President, Senator Escudero, I move that we elect Senator Escudero as member of the Committee on Tourism representing the minority.
There is a motion to include Senator Escudero as member of the Committee on Tourism to represent the minority. Any objection? There being none, the motion is approved.
Mr. President, may I have a 1-minute suspension?
1 minute suspension.
Dito siya.
Which makes a lot of sense. Because 14 or even number. Hindi na makakawala. Sa tayo, good.
Second rounder natin sa Monday na. Sa Monday mo din sa akin.
Monday ko na ito.
Oo, lahat ng second round sa Monday.
Kanina sa coaching session. So, dalawa. Tatlo yun yung mga.
Pero dalawa mo.
Pero dalawa niya.
Ayun, tawagin mo si Ron. Si Ron. Patanggalin sa games. Sumobra? 11. 12 ang nasa. So, bawas yun. 11 ang sulit.
Nung nag-adjourn kami, hindi, nung situation nung nag-adjourn kami, walang pending. Nung nag-suspend kami, walang pending.
Ready to resume, Mr. President.
Session is resumed.
Mr. President, as an additional member for the Committee on Energy, I move that we elect Senator Villar. We earlier only manifested 14 members, each already included the 2 members from the minority, but the membership of the committee is 15. So the additional member now is Senator Cynthia Villar.
There is a motion to add Senator Villar as an additional member to the Committee on Energy. Any objection? There being none, the motion is approved.
Thank you. Mr. President, for the Committee on Public Services that we elected earlier, chairman and members, there was I think we were 1 member over the membership of 11. So I move that we, with the concurrence of, have been informed of this. Senator, I move that we remove Senator Angara as member of the Committee on Public Services.
There is a motion. There is a motion. There is a motion to remove the name of Senator Angara from the list of members of the Committee on Public Services. Any objection? There being none, the motion is approved.
He jokingly objected, Mr. President. For the Committee on Social Justice, Welfare and Rural Development, as instructed by the Senate President, I move that we elect Senator Villar as chairman and members Binay, Zubiri, Ejercito, Cayetano de Lima, and for the minority, Senator Trillanes.
There is a motion to constitute the Committee on Social Justice, Welfare and Rural Development with Senator Villar as chairperson and the other senators as members thereof. Any objection? There being none, the motion is approved and the Committee on Social Justice, Welfare and Rural Development is so constituted.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Is that the second committee already?
Isasabit ko lang sa'yo, boss. Paano yung isa pa?
Ito rin, meron din si Grace na second. Okay na.
If there's no objection, let's declare a minutes suspension. Okay. Majority Leader.
Just one more, Mr. President. The Committee on Health. All right, 1 minute suspension.
A
Mr.
minute
President.
suspension. Session is resumed.
Wala, isa na lang.
Majority Leader.
Ito pa, ito.
Yung government corporations ba?
Hindi pa, sa Monday na yun, Monday na. Mr. President, earlier we elected the members of the Committee on Health headed by the Chairman, Senator Risa Ontiveros. May I now reiterate the complete membership of the Committee on Health? Senator Risa Ontiveros as Chairman. Vice Chair is Senator Honasan. Members are De Lima, Gordon, Villanueva, Legarda, Angara, Binay, and Ejercito. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yes, 9. Ilan ba members?
11 members.
For the minority? For the minority, Senator Trillanes and Escudero. So move, Mr. President.
There is a motion now to constitute the Committee on Health and Demography with the complete list of members still to be chaired by Senator Ontiveros. Any objection? There being none, the motion is approved and the Committee on Health and Demography is so constituted.
Blue ribbon, blue ribbon. Mr. President, I move that we remove Senator Hontiveros as member of the Committee on Public Order. We manifested more than the number required, Mr. President, earlier.
Okay, there is a public order. There is a motion now to remove the name of Senator Ontiveros from the list of members of the Committee on
Public Order.
Public Order. Is there any objection? There being none, the motion is approved.
I move that we elect now the members, the chairman and members of the Committee on Blue Ribbon, the accountability of public officers, Mr. President. Move that we elect Senator Richard Gordon as chairman, vice chairman Senator Angara, members Aquino, Cayetano, De Lima, Ejercito, Honasan, Ontiveros, Lacson, Legarda, Pacquiao, Pangilinan, Poe, Villar, Zubiri.
Ilan yan? Ilan na ba yun? Can we count, please?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15.
15, there's 17.
Two more from the minority. Trillanes, Escudero, Mr. President.
Okay, there is a motion to constitute the Committee on Accountability of Public Officers and Investigations to be led by Chairman Senator Gordon and the other senators named as members thereof. Any objection? There being none, the Committee on Accountability of Public Officers and Investigations is hereby constituted.
Just for the record, Mr. President, as a manifestation, the Majority Leader, Mr. President, for the record, the Senate President Pro Tem, the Majority Leader and the Minority Leader are ex-officio members of all the standing committees. Just for the record, Mr. President. And the Vice Chairmen who were not named may be designated by their chairman during the committee's organizational meetings, Mr. President.
Let that be on record.
All right. The other membership and chairmanship shall be elected on Monday. Now, I say Monday, Mr. President, because because, Mr. President, I move that we adjourn the session until 3 o'clock in the afternoon of Monday, August 1. The reason, Mr. President, is that there was an emergency meeting called by the National Security Council, and all the officers of the Senate are asked to attend by the President. So with that, I move to adjourn until Monday, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Mr. President.
Is there any objection? There being none, the session is adjourned until 3 o'clock in the afternoon of Monday, August 1, 2016.